Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good few times before. I've had some really nice and very interesting beers from these guys over the last year or so, quite a few different styles as well, you know, New England, West Coast, rye, black IPAs, and the most recent beer we had, if memory serves correctly, was an oat stout, which I thought was very nicely done. But the one we're going to try today is a completely different style from any of those, and hopefully it's as good as those other beers that we've had, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well then. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to return to Kungsbacka, to the south of Gothenburg, Göteborg, up there on the Swedish west coast, and we're going to have a look at another beer from AKiA Brygghus. So this particular beer is called the 434 Kungsbacka, or 434 Kungsbacka, to give it its full Swedish name. This one comes in at 5.5% ABV, and they're describing this as a lager beer. So exactly what kind of lager beer it's going to be, I'm not 100% sure, but we'll be able to assess that when we open it up and get it tasted. But yeah, when I saw these guys were releasing a lager beer, I thought, you know, I have to have a go at this. I've been really enjoying my lagers again over the last kind of 18 months, 2 years or so, and as I said, I've been impressed with the stuff that this brewery's been putting out there. Quite a few people have been telling me that I need to have a look at some of their more recent New England IPAs, so I will keep that in mind for when I do my next order. I'll keep an eye out for any New England releases that these guys are doing. So yeah, but these guys doing some very nice beer, getting a lot of plaudits in recent times, so if you get the chance to try some of their beers, I would certainly recommend it. The beers that I've had have been very well done and really quite interesting actually. But yeah, my first lager beer from AKiA Brygghus, and like I say, hopefully it's an interesting review and you guys enjoy it as well. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from AKiA Brygghus, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about AKiA Brygghus. So AKiA Brygghus, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Kungsbacka, to the south of Gothenburg, and this brewery was founded by Christian Figvid back in 2016. So he'd worked as a lighting technician in the music industry, and this had taken him all over the world. He was a sound engineer for Soundtrack of Our Lives, and he also worked with the Wannadies and Tostrum as well, which is quite impressive. But he travelled around for 8 years, and then he had children, so he decided that he wanted to stay put in his work life. So when he started brewing a little bit, he started off working 20% in the brewery, and he brewed with a 300 litre brew kit, but eventually quickly found that this just wasn't big enough, so he upgraded to a 1500 litre brewery in August of 2017, and this took his brewing capacity up to around 40,000 litres per year. But in 2018 he brewed around 10,000 litres of beer, and then he upgraded the brewery again in 2019 to further increase the capacity. But he's also got a history of letting other home brewers brew at the brewery as well. But over the last few years, since 2019, they've just been gradually kind of, you know, developing new recipes and upping their fermentation capacity so they can produce more. But the brewery itself can be found in the old Alfors mill, and the name of the brewery, AKiA, is an abbreviation of the Swedish name for this. I can't remember exactly what the Swedish name for it is, but that's what I read about this. The AKiA Brygghus is like an abbreviation for the full name of this old mill in which the brewery is based. But as of May 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 45 different kinds of beer. Like I told you earlier, they do quite a few different styles. I've had rye, black, West Coast and New England IPAs from them, as well as an oat stout, which was really interesting, and now we've got a lager beer from them. So yeah, they're not afraid to try different styles. But this brewery have had quite a lot of plaudits in recent times, so I look forward to trying more beers from them over the next little while. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about AKiA Brygghus for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all those different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how it is. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open up. As you can see, it's a little bit plain compared to some of the other ones we've had from AKiA Brygghus before. So that you know, the name of this beer, 434 Feira Trefeira, that is the postcode, mail code, zip code, whatever you want to call it, for Kungsbacka. So 434 goes at the start of the 5-number code. But there you can see the AKiA Brygghus symbol there, obviously a reference to the Alfors mill. But yeah, this beer, 440ml can. I forgot to mention earlier that this one was released as part of the Lokal Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for May of 2021. And I think it cost me like 30 kroners, something like this. So yeah, about 30 Swedish kroners. That's roughly about €3 for the can. About £2, £2.50, £2.75. Probably more like £2.50, yeah, probably about £2.50 sterling for it, and then maybe about $3.50 American, just so those of you watching abroad do have a little bit of a price reference for this beer. But yeah, 440 milliliters, this one, 5.5% lager beer. I'm not sure exactly what kind of lager beer it's going to be, but we'll figure that out when we get it out and tasted. But yeah, certainly nice to try my first lager from AKiA. So without further ado, let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very curious about this. So, oh, it's kind of an amber lager, this one maybe. No, a little bit more yellow. There we go. So remember, your basic definition of a lager beer. Your basic definition of a lager beer is cold temperature fermentation. So a fermentation process taking place between about 8 and 12 degrees Celsius. And that is, you know, it's usually, they call that bottom fermenting yeast normally. So yeah, your ales tend to ferment between like 15 and 18 degrees Celsius, which is top fermenting yeast. But yeah, as you can see before the head disappears, this beer poured with about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head. It's faded away to be pretty much nothing, just a little bit of a kind of foamy, wisp on the top of this, but a nice little foamy ring around the edge of the glass, and I think it goes together really nicely actually. I think that works very well. But yeah, it certainly looks like a little bit like a Pilsner or a Helles or something like this. Absolutely. So yeah, I think it's fair to describe this one as quite a rich golden straw colour. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, but you know, not a lot, and there's just a tiny little bit of carbonation visible going up towards the surface of the beer there. But remember, in terms of the colour of your beer, it depends on 1, the type of malts that you use, and 2, the length of your wort boil. Adjuncts and barrel aging, of course, can play a role in this, but that's not really going to affect what's going on in this beer, I wouldn't think. But yeah, the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer, but the magnitude of the colour is determined in the first instance by what malts that you use. So yeah, the colour in this one's probably coming from a little bit of like Pilsner malt or Carapils or something like this. But yeah, certainly looks pretty nice, this one, but nothing overly surprising about this beer when you consider that it is a lager beer. It certainly looks a little bit somewhere in between like a, you know, like a Pilsner, a Helles, or a Czech Svetli, as they would call it. Yeah, it could be a late sack right enough. It does have a wee touch of an amber quality to it, but yeah, we'll figure out from the taste exactly what it is. But yeah, it certainly looks the part of a lager beer then. Let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on. Oh, it does smell a little bit more kind of Pilsnery like. Yeah, it's the first thing you're going to notice with this beer in the aroma is the sort of crispness. This beer really comes across as a more kind of Pilsnery type lager. Although it's strange then, if it is a Pilsner, I don't know why they wouldn't just call it a Pils. But yeah, getting a lager beer right is a very technically demanding task. You know, if a brewery can get a lager right, that's the sign of a good brewery. AKiA Brygghus down here in Skåne in the south of Sweden would be case in point. Those guys are awesome at lagers. But yeah, the aroma of this beer is very, very nice, and it's pretty much what you would expect from the style. When it comes to lager beers, I don't really look for these things to do anything crazy. I just look for them to be like authentic and close to the German or the Czech variants that you'll find. But yeah, for me, straight away with this beer, you can smell that nice sort of pilsnery malt crispness coming out of it. You've got that soft bready backbone to it as well. You can smell a little bit of that kind of bread crusty note in there, one or two little grainy elements. So yeah, wee bit of that wholemeally grainy brown bread, a little bit of a bread crusty element in there, and you can smell the crispness of the pilsner malt in this beer. So I like how this one goes together actually. The aroma of this beer, as I say, it's just very, very authentic. Yeah, grainy, slightly brown bready malty backbone there, a little bit of bread crust. You've got a little touch of a sweet caramel in there, a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. Yeah, and that's exactly what you would expect from a sort of pilsner beer. There's maybe, there's one or two little hints of woody character underneath there. But yeah, the more that you smell of it, it becomes a little bit more wholemeally and bready, a little bit more biscuity, and a little touch more kind of sweet and caramelly actually. So yeah, the aroma of this beer, I think, is very, very nice in that sense. On the hoppy side of things, it's kind of what you'd expect. There's a little bit of earthiness in there. You do get a nice wee touch of a herbal quality and some good floral aromaticity, a nice little bit of grassy zestiness as well actually. So yeah, I like how that goes together as well. So I think it's probably German noble hops that are in this one, or like Czech Sats, Žatec or something like this. And the other option would be some of the Slovenian ones, but I think I would be more tempted to say Czech Sats hops in this, because there is just a little tiny hint of spiciness in there. But it could be something like German. It could be a little bit of something like German Hercules or Sapphire, something like that. It's definitely one. I think it's definitely either Czech Sats or one of the German noble hops that's in this. I don't think the hops are quite smooth enough to be like the Slovenian, the Styrian Goldings or whatever. I don't think that they're quite smooth enough to be like that. They feel like they've got a bit more bite to them. So the brightness would indicate more of a German thing, but then the spicy note might indicate either a higher German alpha acid hop or a more kind of Czech Satsy sort of thing. But yeah, you've got, as I say, nice little bit of floral character out of this one, a little bit of a a little bit of a kind of just grassy zestiness to it as well. But on the fruity side of things, this beer is pretty much what you would expect. You've got a nice little bit of a kind of peary ester coming out of it. There's a little bit of a kind of spicy apple, maybe a little touch of a kind of lemony, grassy sort of thing as well actually. But yeah, this beer is exactly kind of as you would expect in that sense. A little bit of kind of oily, juicy pear, wee bit of a kind of spicy apple, and then just a wee bit of a kind of lemony, grassy element to it as well. So I really like how the beer goes together in that sense. It gets a thumbs up from me in terms of authenticity, and that is what I would expect from a lager beer. This brewery, as I say, they carry a good reputation these days, so you would expect a good example of this style from them. Let's put the last of it in then, and we'll have a taste of it and see how we get on. So there we are. Yeah, so this one is the Fura Trifura Kungsbacka, 434 Kungsbacka, whatever you want to call it, from AKiA Brygghus in Kungsbacka, just to the south of Gothenburg. A 5.5% lager beer, this one. I think this is going to be like a Pilsner, but we'll get a definite answer when we taste it. Sláinte, skål, cheers. Oh, now I'm going to say straight away, this is a very very well done beer, this one. In terms of the lager beers, yeah, I will say straight away, this is potentially this isn't the craziest beer that you're going to get from AKiA Brygghus, but if you're like me and you enjoy a lager, then I think you will enjoy this one. This is very nice. One of my favourite lagers in Sweden is the Skånsk lager from Halland Brewery here in Skåne, and I've had some other nice ones as well. I mean, Rainbow Leaf Gårds Brewery, their Skånsk Pils that they have, that's a beautiful beer. There's quite a few really interesting lager beers here in Sweden. I've had some very, very good examples of them over the last while, but this one I think is again very nicely executed. So yeah, this is, as I said, if you can do a lager beer well, that's an indication of a good brewery, but we knew that AKiA are pretty damn good before this. But yeah, in terms of lager beers, I think this one's pretty solid actually, so well done to AKiA for this. Yeah, the interesting thing with this is it actually comes across, it's not really it doesn't come across particularly as being a Pilsner, and it doesn't come across as being like, you know, a Czech Svetli or a Helles or you know, a Letsak or a Märzen or anything like that. Although, you know, it's not quite biscuity enough to be it's not quite kind of biscuity enough to be a Märzen, and it's not quite oily enough to be like a Maibach or anything like that. So yeah, I think this one is that this might be a sort of attempt to brew like a better kind of macro type lager in a sense. It could be something like that. On Untappd it was listed as they sort of listed it as a Euro Pale lager, which that's usually a reference to like a kind of macro lager beer, and I can see why they would do that actually. But you can kind of tell, you can tell from the flavour of this one, obviously the ingredients are a lot better than you're going to get in some of those. I mean, if it is like a Euro Pale lager or whatever, it would be like the equivalent with a German brewed one, something like that. So yeah, this one does have a little bit of that kind of macro lager type vibe to it, but it just feels a lot kind of cleaner and a lot, you know, more, just a lot better done basically. So yeah, interesting. But yeah, the quality of this beer is very nice actually. I like this one. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this again. So I think in terms of the style, when we're talking about what type of lager this one is, it feels like it's one of these ones that's brewed to sort of mimic the sort of Euro Pale lagers and things. But what the takeaway from this beer should be that this brewery is, if they can do other lagers like this, they're very capable within that lager category actually. So I would love to see them have a go at like a, you know, a proper Pilsner or like a Munich Helles or something like this. It'd be really cool to see these guys experiment a little bit more with the lagers and do, you know, like a Czech Pilsen style beer and things like this. That would be very nice to see. But yeah, I like this. I do like this one for sure. This could be a very good core beer actually for them. But yeah, I think, you know, maybe, although if they did like the 434 Pilsner or something, if they made this like a proper like pure Pilsner beer, I think they could do, that would be a very interesting core beer to have. But in terms of lager beers, I think this one is nicely done. So let's break down the flavour for you a little bit more and just describe it properly. So the beer actually translates into the flavour much like it does from the aroma. You know, the aroma translates over pretty well. So straight away, the backbone of this beer across the middle of your palate, you've got a lovely smooth, you do have a lovely kind of, you've got a little bit of a kind of brown bready, you do have a nice little bit of a kind of grainy, brown bready backbone to this one, a sort of wholemealy note there. So that's the middle third of your palate. You will, if you go to the front corners of your palate, then move diagonally back, you do get a very slightly woody undertone to that, but that's very minimal. And what you'll see is that at either end of that middle third of your palate, you're getting a good bit of a kind of bread crusty, grainy build up to the beer. But sitting on top of that, you have a how would we say? You have a oh, my brain's not working. On top of that, you do get a little bit of a slightly thicker bready element to it, but in the very dead centre of your palate, you do get a little bit of a kind of concentrated, slightly sort of sweet brown sugar there. It's a little bit boozy at the same time, but it's like you've got a little circle of a concentrated brown sugar there. Then as you move out from that central part of the mouth there, as you move out towards the edge of the palate there, it starts to get a little bit more kind of biscuity and grainy. And what you'll notice is that if you go from the if you go from that dead centre of your palate towards the back end of that middle third of your tongue, you start to get a more kind of Pilsner malty dryness out of this beer. So yeah. So yeah, you do get a little bit of that out of this one. And the other thing I'm noticing about this beer is that the more that I drink of it, the more it starts to sweeten up and kind of oil up a little bit. So yeah, I do like how that goes together in this beer for sure. It's very, very nicely done in that sense. So yeah, it's got everything you would want from a lager beer actually. I think it goes together very, very nicely. Absolutely. And that's the middle third of your palate. Very straight shooting in a lot of ways. Doesn't do anything surprising, but like I say, I look for authenticity when it comes from these beers. But let's look at the back third of your palate then. So on that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a kind of crusty, bready build up there. You can feel a wee bit of graininess on it. Then the back third of your palate, I think, becomes distinctly more sort of grainy, and yeah, it becomes distinctly more grainy and a little bit more kind of bitey in that sense. And then sitting on top of that back third of your palate, you've got a little bit of you do have a nice bit of an earthy character coming out of the beer as well. You do get a little bit of that kind of yeasty, you get a little bit of a kind of yeasty quality just sitting on top of that. So the flavour on the back third of your palate is kind of like this. Feels like that, then it condenses down gradually as you go towards the border region. Then there, as you move into that middle third of your palate, the flavours are quite condensed together. But say this is quite a light, crisp, drinkable beer. That's what it's intended to be. But yeah, malty and kind of yeasty side of this beer go together quite nicely, I would say. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, in the back corners of the palate, you do get a little bit of earthiness out of this one. And as you move further forward from that, you can feel it does get a wee touch herbal, but then it gets quite strong and floral the further forward you go on the sides of the palate there. So if I was guessing what hop of this, I think I would stick with my idea that I had, that it's maybe like a, it's something like Zafir or maybe a bit of Zafir, or Hercules maybe. It feels like it's a slightly stronger alpha acid, a slightly higher alpha acid German hop that's in here. Czech Zatz would be a good one. You've also got the Kungsbacka actually as well hop, which is, it's a smaller produced one from the Czech Republic, but it has these kind of strong, kind of dark floral spicy notes to it, and you're getting that out of this one. So there's maybe quite a bit of early edition hopping in this beer. So yeah, I do like how it goes together. This beer does have a wee bit more of a kind of hoppy bite to it in a sense. So thumbs up to AKiA for this. It almost has a little bit of a kind of Italian Pilsner type vibe to it in a sense, with the level of hoppiness you get out of the beer. But then round the front curve of the palate, you do get a little bit of a lighter sort of grassy zestiness out of the beer, and that for me goes together very nicely too. So yeah, the grassiness on this beer does give you a wee bit of zestiness, as I say, the further you go into the aftertaste. But on that front third of your palate, as I say, border region between front third and middle third of your tongue, you've got a little bit of a you have a little bit of a more kind of bread crusty kind of element out of it, and I really like how that really do like how that goes together. But yeah, for me, that's again, that's very nice. Then the base of that front third of your palate, it's you can feel there's a bit of the sort of grainy brown bready element in there again, and on top of that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the hops. And for me, this one is kind of what you would expect. You've got a nice sort of how would we say, there's a good little bit of a kind of peary note to this one. I do get quite a wee bit of a spicy apple. There's maybe one or two tiny little hints of apricot there, but for me it's kind of a peary spicy apple note that you get out of this one. Then just behind the front tip of your tongue there, you get a little bit of that more kind of concentrated, you get a little bit more of that sort of concentrated kind of almost like limey note that mixes in with the grassy esters too. So yeah, it's an interesting beer, this one. I do think there's something that's telling me in my head, yes, Sapphire or Hercules or something like this. So I like how that side of this beer pieces together actually. So big thumbs up to AKiA for this one. It's a really nicely done lager beer, this one. It is almost like they've taken the idea of a macro lager and just, you know, made it better, given it purer ingredients and done it this way. It doesn't really fit into the sort of Helles lager for me. It doesn't fit into that category, and it doesn't fit into the Pilsner note. It's not quite crisp enough to be a Pilsner, and it's not quite biscuity enough to be like say for example a Märzen. It's not oily enough to be a Maibock, and it's not kind of bready and smooth enough, I think, to be a Helles actually. So yeah, I'm not quite sure what what kind of idea they were going for here, if they were looking to just do like a sort of generic lager, if you like. But whatever it is a nice lager beer, and it is a nice drinkable thing, and that's what you want from this style, of course. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, what would we say about this one? You know, light-bodied beer, kind of in the middle of the spectrum of the light-bodied beer. Carbonation does have a wee bit of crispness to it. The beer does have a wee touch of oily slickness to it. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I think this one might be about 25-ish IBUs. You do get a little bit more bitterness out of this beer the further you go into the aftertaste. Good bit of a grainy backbone to it, nice sort of sweeter, sort of rounded brown sugars in there, and you've got a little bit of a juicy, as I say, you do have a wee bit of a kind of juicy, slightly oily, fruity character to this one. But overall, it is a very nicely done lager beer, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink that again. I would love to see these guys do like a Doppelbock and a Dunkel and things like that, do all of these German and Czech style lager beers. A Vienna lager, going from the sort of mouthfeel and stuff that this beer has, a Vienna lager from this brewery could be a very interesting prospect actually. I would love to see them try that. So yeah, if the guys from AKiA Brygghus are watching, have a go at a few different types of lager beers, but this is certainly a very solid, as far as I know, first attempt at the lager beers, or first release of a lager beer, I should say, because probably they've brewed them on the small scale and things. But yeah, it's a thumbs up from me, this one. I wouldn't hesitate to drink it again, and as I promised you earlier on in the video, I will make sure I review a few more of the New Englands from AKiA Brygghus, probably later in the year after the summer. But yeah, this was a nice addition to my AKiA reviews. I enjoyed this one, the 434 Fyra Trefyra Kungsbacka Lager Beer, 5.5% ABV from AKiA Brygghus in Kungsbacka to the south of Gothenburg. Let's round off the review there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from AKiA Brygghus. Always nice to review new beers from these guys, and this one certainly went down a treat. So thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out my other reviews, and I'll see you guys again soon. Sláinte, skål, cheers, and see you guys in the next review.